Good morning, friends. We'll start UCS 66, Asme Section 8, Division 1. Unless exempted by rules UG 20F or other rules of this division, figure UCS 66 shall be used to establish impact testing exemptions for steels listed in Part UCS. When figure UCS 66 is used, impact testing is required for a combination of minimum design metal temperature and governing thickness as defined below, that is below the curve assigned to the subject material. If a minimum design metal temperature and governing thickness combination is one on or above the curve, impact testing is not required by the rules of this division except as required by J below. UCS 67A3 for weld metal components such as shells, heads, nozzles, manuals, reinforcing pads, flanges, tube sheets, flat cover plates, backing strips, which remain in place, the attachment which are essential to the structural integrity of the vessel. When welded to pressure retaining components shall be treated as separate components. Each component shall be evaluated for impact test requirements based on its individual material classification, governing thickness as defined in 1 and 2 below. Excluding casting, the governing thickness of a welded part is follows. The butt joints except those flatheads and tube sets, nominal thickness, thickest welded joint. The corner fillet lap welded joints, including attachments as defined above, the thinner of the two parts joint. For flatheads or tube sets, the larger of the above, or flat component thickness divided by 4. If the governing thickness a tiny welded joint exceeds 4 inch 100 mm and minimum design metal temperature colder than 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 50 degrees centigrade, impact tested material shall be used. This is impact test exemption curve. So clearly they tell here on or above in the governing thickness that is below the curve assigned to the subject material. Impact testing is required for combination of minimum design metal temperature and governing thickness. So you have minimum design thickness and temperature design thickness. So both combination. If you go here below the curve, then you are having impact. There's curve A, curve B, curve C. So different materials are assigned to that. So you have to find out those things we already discussed. Only important is this one. All carbon and all low alloy steel plates, structure shapes and bars not listed in curve BCD below. So this will cause this is coming to curve. So if there is no material, this material is not listed in BCD, then it is coming to curve. You already seen how to use it, so I'm not going to too much to that. If governing thickness of the non-welded part exceeds 6 inch and the minimum design metal temperature colder than 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 50 degrees centigrade, impact tested materials shall be used. It is already 100 is cleared, so why they are writing again, I don't know. Why it is going to 6 inch again? It is 4 inch already. Something. When a coincident ratio defined figure UCS 66.1 is less than 1, figure UCS 66.1 provides basis for use of components made of part UCS material to have colder MDMT than the derived from A above without impact testing. Use figure UCS 66.1 is not permitted for bolts and nuts. See below. For such components of MDMT minus 55, minus 48 degrees centigrade and warmer, the MDMT without impact testing determine the above for given material. 66M impact test exemption curve, that is 66. Thickness may be reduced as determined from figure UCS 66.2 if the resulting temperature is colder than required MDMT. Impact testing of the material is not required. There is tabular form, tabular values of UCS 66. So you can find out thickness and curve. From thickness and curve, you can find out the minimum temperature which is required. If you go below that, then you need impact testing. The reduction in the minimum design metal temperature without impact testing. There were 66.1 and 66.2, 1M. There is 66.2 also there, something written. This one, you cannot, you have to find one ratio. TRE divided by TN minus C. En is the nominal thickness of component under consideration before corrosion allowance. TR is the required thickness of the component under consideration in the corroded condition. Before corrosion allowance is deducted. So E is defined in figure UCS 66.2 and C is the corrosion allowance. So if you are getting this, from that you can find out whether you are in Fahrenheit. So below 0.35, there is nothing really. And here also below 0.35. 66.2 diagram of UCS 66 rules determining lowest minimum design temperature without impact testing. So you have joint efficiency, TN, TR, C corrosion. Select MDMT from figure UCS 66. For each nominal non-corrected governing thickness, find out this TRE divided by TN minus C. From the ratio from step 3 to enter ordinate this, determine the reduction. Step 2 MDMT. Determine the adjusted MDMT for governing thickness under consideration if you are finding something. Repeat all governing thickness and take warmest value as the lowest allowable MDMT to marked on nameplate for the zone under consideration. CUG 99H for coldest recommended metal temperature during hydrostatic test. The UG 100 for coldest metal temperature permitted during pneumatic test. 66.2 diagram uses 66 rules of determining lowest minimum design metal temperature MDMT without impact testing. No impact testing is required for part UCS material 0.1 inch, 2.5 mm in thickness and thinner, but such exempted part UCS materials shall not be used at design material temperature colder than minus 55 degrees Fahrenheit for minus 48 degrees centigrade. You already used it, or you can see again. The time you can see how we are using these things. So when you find the ratio, you can go here and there. There is something written for so figure UCS 66.1 may be used to use for component not stressed general primary membrane tensile stress such as flatheads, cover, tube seat, and plunges the MDMT for these components without impact testing as determined in A, B, or C may be reduced as determined from figure UCS 66.2. The ratio used in step 3 or figure 66.2 shall be ratio of maximum design pressure MDMT to maximum allowable pressure MAP the component at MDMT. If the resulting temperature is colder than the required MDMT, impact testing of material is not required provided the MDMT is not colder than minus 55 degrees centigrade, minus 48 degrees centigrade. Normalized rolling condition is not considered as being equivalent to normalizing. Fine grain practice is defined as the procedure necessary to obtain fine austenitic grain size, as described in Essay 20. Cooling rates faster than those obtained by cooling in air, followed by tempering, permitted by material specification are considered to equivalent to normalizing. For normalizing and tempering heat treatment, cooling in air followed by tempering as permitted by material specification are considered this. Something you have to just check, and that's all for 66. We already used, and when we use again you can see. Impact test of welding procedures except as exempted UG 20 F UCS 66 UCS 68. The welding procedure qualifications shall include impact test of the weld metal and heat affected zones in accordance with UG 84 when required by the following provision. The minimum design metal temperature MDMT used below shall be either MDMT stamped on the nameplate or exemption temperature of the welded component before applying the temperature reduction permitted by UCS 66B 68C. Welds made for filler metal shall be deposited using welding procedure qualified with impact testing in accordance with UG 84 when any of the following apply. Okay, we'll go for 66 one time. Because again, I just remind you this one. Impact testing is required for a combination minimum design metal temperature and governing thickness defined below, that is below curve assigned to the subject material. So then if a minimum metal temperature governing thickness combination is on the above the curve, the impact testing is not required by the, so if it is above, you don't require anything. This is 66.3, some typical vessel details showing governing thickness as design. UCS 66. When joining base metals exempt from impact testing, UCS 66G, MDMT is colder than minus 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 48 degrees centigrade. Except for welds made as part of material specification, welds part UCS materials made without filler metal shall be completed using welding procedure qualified with impact testing may be following conditions apply. Either base metal is required to be impact tested by the rules of division. The thickness of the weld exceeds 13 mm regardless of MDMT. The thickness of the weld exceeds 5 by 16 inch 8 mm for MDMT colder than 50 degrees Fahrenheit 10 degrees centigrade, or when joining base metal exempt from impact testing by UCS 66G, MDMT is colder than minus 55 degrees centigrade, minus 48 degrees centigrade. So we can see G again, integrally reinforced Okay. UCS 66G. Materials produced and impact tested in accordance with the requirements of specification listed in UG 84.1 General Note, exempt from the impact testing by rules subdivision, the minimum distance. Design metal temperature not more than 5 degrees Fahrenheit, colder than test temperature required by specification. I don't think so. Same thing. When confidence ratio defined in the figure 60 is less than 1. Okay, design the welded joints will comply with UW2B when the minimum design metal temperature is colder than minus 55 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 48 degrees centigrade, unless the coincident ratio defined in figure UCS 66.1 less than 0.35. Welded joints shall be post-weld heat treated in accordance with the requirement of UW40 when required by other rules of this division when the minimum design metal temperature is colder than minus 55 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 48 degrees centigrade. The coincident ratio defined in figure UCS 66.1 is 0.35 or greater. The post-weld heat treatment is required. Except that this requirement doesn't apply to the following welded joints. The vessel and vessel parts fabricated P number 1 material that are impact tested in MDMT and colder in accordance with the UG 84. The minimum average energy required for base metals and weldments shall be 25 foot LB, 34 joule instead of values shown in figure UG 84.1. When joining base metal exempt from the testing, UCS 66 and the MDMT is colder than this. A post-weld heat treating of a pressure retaining weld is performed when it is not otherwise requirement of division 30 degrees Fahrenheit. A 30 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 degrees centigrade reduction in impact testing exemption may be given to minimum permissible temperature from UCS 66. By post-weld heat treating, which is not required, when you take it, then you get a reduction of minus that 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can get reduction of 30 degrees Fahrenheit. P number 1 material. The resulting exemption temperature may be colder than minus 55, minus 48 degrees centigrade when the PWST exemption B is applicable. Seal welds and all, I think so. Seal welds define. Okay, you can see this one. It's clear slide. UCS 66 used for detect impact test required or not required when using this code. MOC, T and MDMT, material of construction, material thickness. Define which curve ABCD given MOC. While detect curves, consider whether it is abnormalized or not normalized. Material is listed in curve BCD, then consider curve A. After find the curve, check the exemption table. Curve diagram against MDMT and thickness. MDMT below the curve or exemption. Temperature is impact test required. MDMT is above the curve or exemption. Temperature is impact test is exemption. If impact test is not exempted, refer to UG 20F. UG 20F following two rules should meet impact test exemption. MDMT should not below minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, nor the thickness limited not above. Curve A 13 mm, curve BCD is 25 mm. So if these two rules met, then you have exemption. The MDMT should not be below minus 20, and these two things. Step 4, applicable only for when done PWST. So when you do PWST, new exemption temperature minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 degrees centigrade. Temperature from UCS 66 table, what you find, then you can minus. Nor the new exemption temperature should not below this. So you cannot go just beyond minus 55. If the MDMT below the new exemption temperature is impact test required. The MDMT above new exemption temperature, the impact test is exemption. Colors will stop.